Welcome to BRAP. We're live. It's Wednesday. It is Wednesday. You know what that means. Oops. Hold on. Are we having some difficulties here? Hold on. What is going on? Hopefully everyone can hear us. Look like there's some difficulty here with Streamlabs. Let's see here. Hold on just a sec here. All right. Let me see what's going on. All right, I think we're good now. Okay, sorry about that. Looks like there was some issue with Streamlabs. I don't know what was going on. Yeah, it was kind of weird. I don't know what happened. Anyhow, it's Wednesday. Welcome to BRAP. We've got a lot to talk about. It's January. Well, it's not January anymore, but January was a big month in terms of gaming news. And it started off with a big bang with Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, and then lo and behold, Sony came out and made a pretty big acquisition announcement themselves, which we'll talk about later on. Talk about some big news, some even bigger news coming out of, some big news coming out of Sony's camp with regards to content. And you kind of discuss like what's next for Sony, because Jim Ryan's already saying, hey, expect more acquisitions, so we'll get that in a little bit. But I want to go ahead and introduce the panel here real quick. We got a returning guest. We've had this gentleman on before. Happy to have him back on, get his thoughts on, the topics we're going to be discussing tonight. We have Game Logic. Game Logic, what's going on, man?
Man, explain to me what's going on with the chat, because the show is not even 5 minutes underway. We have 22 likes already, which I feel like I don't normally see until like almost a half hour into the show, and like people are glad to see us, which I'm also not accustomed to.
I don't know, man. That's a great question. I think people are just they're excited. It's February. There's a lot of content coming this month. Maybe it's people are just excited about games, I guess. I don't know. But everyone, please hit that like button if you haven't done so already. We got like I said, I got 26 likes. So certainly appreciate the support. But great to have you back on Game Logic.
So hold me now. Somebody in the chat is saying I'm on mute, so you can hear me. Can everybody else hear me?
I can hear you. I think I don't know. Let's see here. Can everyone hear Game Logic? Just want to make sure that you guys can hear him. I can.
It looks like chat's coming in now, saying that they can hear me. So
okay, awesome. And then we got our regular panel member here. We got the man who, again, when he speaks, someone's saying mic levels all over the place. I don't know. Mike's kind of low. Well, whose mic's low? That's what I want to know. I don't know. We'll try to figure it out. Yeah, sorry about that. We'll try to figure it out. Like I said, there was something going on with Streamlabs. I don't know. We'll figure it out though. And it could be a Discord issue too as well. All right, Biggie Butters saying we hear you, but you have low volume. Okay, who has low volume? Biggie Butters, just so that we know.
I think they're talking about me, so I just cranked it up.
Oh yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you much better now. I mean, I heard you. I thought I heard you fine before. They're saying Game Logic. Okay, so Game Logic cranked up is okay.
I got 4 more levels to go, man. So we can pump it up some mo.
They said Game Logic's mic seems like he's speaking through a telephone. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Okay, now Biggie Butter's saying that works. This is the joy of podcasting, by the way, right? All right. Anyhow, all right, we got B Money in the house. And by the way, if you're not listening to B, by the way, saying you're fine now, Game Logic. If you're not listening to B Money when B speaks, you need to listen to this man, because this man drops nuggets. And B may have predicted this, or he may have not, a couple months ago. But B, man, welcome back to BRAP, sir. Great to see you. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Not B. Just I'm excited. It's February, man. But there's a lot of great content dropping this month, man.
There is a lot of great games, a lot of good things to look forward to in the gaming industry. It's a good time to be a gamer. It's very exciting times. A lot of people, throwing money around, you know what I mean? So It's pretty exciting, man. I'm pumped up about this year.
Yeah,
And
me
it's just
too.
getting started.
Yeah, me too. It really is. I mean, it's just great. I mean, it's just a fun time. There's a lot of content that's coming this month, and I know this wasn't an official topic per se, but let's talk about the content this month because Dying Light 2 is coming out on Friday, so they're kind of like kicking things off per se for this month of February. But we have some other notable titles coming out February as well. We have. I get Dying Light comes out on Friday. We have Sifu comes out 4 days after that. If anybody's interested in Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires, that drops February 15th. King of Fighters 15 February 17th, I believe that is. And then we also have some of the big PlayStation exclusives. Horizon Forbidden West, which is February the 18th, and then Elden Ring. And I'll throw Grid Legends in there because that also releases the same day as Elden Ring. But Elden Ring caps off the month of February with the release day of February the 25th. So, on Edge of Eternity on February 10th. But, and I probably.
Did you say caps off?
I meant yeah.
Did you say caps off did you say Crossfire X?
Oh, I did not say Crossfire. I completely forgot about Crossfire X.
And you forgot about Ali World, bro.
Oh, yeah. Ali World is February 8th. That's right, B. I forgot about that, too.
That's right.
We ain't going to hate you, though.
Yeah. What is Crossfire X? That's what? February 28th? No. What is Crossfire?
February 10th.
February 10th.
February
Okay.
10th.
Yeah.
February 10th.
So Elden Ring wraps up the big releases for February. And Elden Ring, I'm a Souls fan. Everyone knows that. Elden Ring's my game of the year. I'm calling it right now. I know it's a little premature, but I'm going to go ahead and say this is going to be the game of the year contender, if not game of the year.
I got to wait in on you one more time, 2 more times. So, did you say anything about Destiny 2?
I did not. You're right. The Destiny 2 expansion. Oh my God.
And I know there's maybe not a ton of PC gamers in the chat, and I know maybe some people aren't into strategy games, but there is also Total War Warhammer 3 coming out on PC February 17th.
That is right. That's a great point. I forgot about Total Warhammer. Yeah. Game Logic, thank you, by the way, this is how much content's in February. I couldn't remember all of it. This is just off the top of my head. I probably should have looked up most of this stuff.
Yeah, and I need to go on record as being, so I was one who for the last several months, as everybody was cheerleading and rah-rahing about how busy a month February is going to be, I said, look, guys, remember the last time the industry did this to us in 2017, all these games slipped out of the holiday season of 2016 and stacked up for release in February, and then everything got delayed and pushed until late 2017 except Breath of the Wild and Horizon Forbidden West. And that February was not anywhere near as busy as it was predicted to be. And so I predicted all of these things were going to get canceled and pushed except for 1 or 2. So I will admit my fault and my incorrectness, and it's good to see that it's actually a pretty big month.
Yeah, and considering too, I mean, you're still in the midst of a pandemic, right? So it's still impressive that these games are releasing. So, but yeah, I mean, like this month is just crazy. I can't even think about. I don't know how much. I mean, I just don't know how much time. And I'm only getting, I'm getting Dying Light 2. I'm not going to get Sifu right away. Probably that I'll push that back. I'm toying with Destiny, the Witch Queen. I haven't played Destiny in a long time. It's probably been over a year. But I don't know. Like sometimes when Bungie releases these expansions, I kind of come back to them. Usually come back to them, or come back to the game.
They always draw people in.
Yeah, right. Like right. B they didn't do that.
They get you in they get you back in there for like a month, 6 weeks, and then move on.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's Horizon Forbidden West, which I think looks fantastic from what we've seen so far. So I mean, I don't know. And then once Elden Ring drops, I mean, that's going to have all my attention. So, yeah. What do you guys, I mean, like, what are the big ones for you guys? I know Game Logic, you mentioned Total Warhammer. What are some of the big ones for you this month?
Yeah, I just picked up Uncharted, the Lost Thieves collection.
I saw that.
So
Yep. For PC, right?
for actually, I got it for PS5.
Oh, okay,
So
PS5. Okay.
and I was very pleasantly surprised to see when I logged in to pull it down that I having gone all digital all the way, that I qualified for a $10 upgrade and was not being asked to pay for the whole thing over again. So, which is really neat when you think about the fact that like one of the really big like knots for people is that if you bought if you bought an all digital edition PlayStation 5, that that you were most likely like there was a good chance that you were locked out of an upgrade path, because if you bought the physical on PlayStation 4 and then went all digital on PlayStation 5, there wasn't an upgrade path from physical to digital. So I was very happy that I bought digital all the way. One thing we didn't mention, one thing that I will just be claiming and then leaving up on the shelf because I can go back and play it at any time is the Life is Strange Remastered Collection.
That's right. Yep, that comes out
on Stadia. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm a Stadia subscriber, so it was a pro game, so I just claimed it. It's in my collection. I'll go back and play it, at my leisure whenever I feel like it. But no, my next big target is Total War Warhammer 3 on the PC.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Cool, man. It's funny. We're talking about game releases, the February, and actually, I have my TV on right now, and there's a commercial playing, and it's Dying Light too. That's hilarious. It's on right now, commercials. So. Interesting. So, but P Money, what are your I guess what games are you getting this month, man?
For me, I'm only getting 4 games this month.
He said only 4. Only 4.
Yeah. Too bad. I have a pretty good strategy. I'm going with
ahead, man.
Two small games and then 2 big games. So
gotcha. Okay.
Valley World and Sifu are going to be the first pickups, which that's early February. And then Horizon, and then Elden Ring, man. So those are my 4, and I think they're all pretty good choices.
Yeah,
look at the landscape of February.
Yeah, that's solid, man. That's solid. So yeah, I mean this is exciting. Like again, I mean it's a great time to be a gamer, which is why it's trivial to me that people really console war the way they do, because I mean there's so much great content coming on both platforms. And it's just a great time to be a gamer. I mean, it's again, think about this. We're in the middle of a pandemic, or maybe towards the end of a pandemic. And these games are still releasing. So, this is, just a great time to be a gamer. By the way, everyone in the live chat, please hit that like button if you're new. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you're alerted when we go live. Go ahead, drop a link here in the live chat, so that you're, so if you wouldn't mind tweeting that out, definitely appreciate it. Also want to talk about, we talk about the February games. PlayStation had their State of Play, which was all about Gran Turismo 7. Now, I got to say, look, I am by no means, I'm not into the racing genre. I'm not like my buddy J-Dub, who has got like the whole, like, car cockpit in his living room. You know what I'm talking about, B? Like the whole setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's got that. Like he's got like a real like steering wheel that you see like on Formula 1 racing cars. It's got like the lights, and you know what I'm talking about, the LED screen on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Like he's not playing.
I've seen this setup a few times. It's pretty nice, man.
Yeah, it's definitely nice. But Jay's really into Gran Turismo 7 or Gran Turismo. And Gran Turismo, by the way, for people who don't know, is actually really big globally, and I believe, isn't it like an Olympic game now or something, or some kind of like, I think it's an Olympic game now, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I'm not sure. I know you can get your IFA license with GT Sport. So they have IFA like tournament every year for the drivers. So
maybe that's what that is. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
which is pretty big.
Yeah, and I've seen videos of people playing that tournament, and it's I mean they have people call. Yeah, it is really intense. Like they have people calling the race, the announcers, or like it's like watching a real race. It's pretty intense. Yeah, And those guys are super focused, like watching them race. It's wild, man. But yeah, so they showed GT7 today, which is they gave us the release date March 4th. So here we go. So we get for Horizon Forbidden West releasing middle of the month of February, and then Sony's following up right away with another AAA game a few weeks later in Gran Turismo 7, which is the much anticipated return of that game. Some people have debated that the franchise isn't where it's been in previous years. That maybe Forza's the go-to sim now. Where Gran Turismo used to be king. Some people still debate that, but that's kind of the conversation that I've seen more recently. Again, I'm not a racing fan. I'm not into that genre per se, but I gotta say that what Sony showed today, and this is a cross-gen platform game, and look, I selfishly I would prefer if Sony just put all their newer first-party games on PlayStation 5 only, but I gotta say, like, even like Horizon Forbidden West, even it being on PlayStation 4 Pro, I don't know if you guys saw the in-game footage that was kind of floating around the internet with Horizon Forbidden West on the PlayStation 4 Pro. That even looked pretty impressive. But GT7 and it being cross-platform is really impressive. They're showing PlayStation 5 footage. They were showing the ray tracing. They were showing how the the weather system works. How the environment. They were saying the environment specific to like parts of the world, specific parts of the world or something, and how the sun sets or something. I forget. Something like that. But I gotta say, like, again, this game, and again, I'm not a racing fan. I was like, wow, like just attention to detail and how meticulous they are with this game just blew me away. Like, it is, it's just a really good looking game. Again, lots of car. Obviously it's for car lovers. They talked about they paid homage to a lot of the older cars, and they even give you a historical insight into the car manufacturers, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And so, like, my son, who he plays Forza Horizon right now, loves it. With his Christmas money, he went out and bought a $150 steering wheel with the pedals, so you can use it. You can use it for Forza Horizon. But he saw GT7. He was like, "We got to get that." He's like, "That looks ridiculous." So I'm going to be picking up GT7 now. I'll probably dabble with it a little bit, but it's going to be more so for him. But yeah, what did you guys think about that? And again, I don't know if you saw the the state of play, if you had a chance to watch it live. B, I don't know if you did. But what did you guys think about it? I mean, what were your impressions of GT7?
Well, for me, I didn't get a chance to watch it live. I kind of watched it on the playback, and visually it looks impressive. You can definitely tell that they're putting everything they have into it. It's been a long time. We haven't had a traditional GT game since the PS3. So for them to kind of get back and form and show what they have. Everything looks really good. They updated some of the sounds. That was one of the things that a lot of people kind of complained about, is a lot of the engine noises weren't as realistic as they could be. So they addressed that. They addressed the lighting and the weather conditions. They brought back the replays. So they've kind of took a lot of the feedback that people have given them over the last few years in regards to what they wanted from the game, and it looks like they're going to deliver. So I'm excited for it. I'm definitely pick it up day one. GT Sport was pretty fun the time that I played with it. So I'm ready to jump back in there. It's been a while since I've played it, just a traditional racer like that. So I'm ready to get back in there.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I haven't played a Gran Turismo probably since, PlayStation 2? maybe that long. But yeah, I
One
mean,
question.
just yeah. Go ahead, Game Legend.
One question I want to ask. So, did they sidestep the whole topic of pricing are they only selling one version at one price?
What do
Are
you
they
mean?
just the quote on the PlayStation blog is that the 25th anniversary edition not only includes the PS5 version, but also comes with the digital code for the PS4 version. So it's perfect for those who only have a PS4 now but are thinking of purchasing a PS5 in the future. So as far as I can tell, this does not indicate that they are selling two SKUs. It sounds like they are selling one SKU at I assume $70, and if you buy that, you get a voucher essentially for PlayStation 4. And so they sidestep the whole $10 upgrade price discussion that causes people so much angst is what it seems like they're doing.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I think they addressed that with the last game that released. So for them, they said that was like half or whatever. Um, and that game releases in February, so
hey,
any release after that, that wouldn't be the
So,
thing that they had talked about.
so my understanding from Ryan's last statement was that everything from here on out was going to have an upgrade cost requirement.
yes,
And that it would be sold in two SKUs, and that there would be no more free upgrades, right? Because the last thing that went down was that they had promised a free
yep.
upgrade
For Horizon Forbidden West, I think was the issue, right?
right, and they said that was
Yeah.
going to be the last time, and hereafter, right, you would have to pay to upgrade. But in this case, it seems like, and I actually commend them if this is the business move, because it seems like they sidestepped the whole pile of cow patty poo that they stepped in last time. They just said we're just going to sell one version, and like if you've got a PS4 now, I guarantee you're going to have to get a PS5 at some point if you want to stay in the PlayStation ecosystem, because we're not putting out anything new solely for that box. So it seems like it's just the one version that's available. Which
Well,
I mean,
there's actually multiple SKUs.
okay, all
Yeah,
right.
so there is
much
a
for that.
there is a PlayStation 5 edition which we know is going to be $70, right? And actually, Sir Nick said this on the PlayStation 4. There's a PS4 version for $60, $70, and
This is just the 25th anniversary edition.
yeah. So the 25th anniversary comes with like the steel case and but also gives you some additional content and effectively like includes both SKUs, if that makes sense, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, so it's both, and I forget. I'm trying to look at the additional content it comes with here. Let's see here. PS5 disc with PS4 entitlement. What else is here?
It seems like I was hoping maybe they had figured out how to pull a rope-a-dope and settle down all this rioting that there is, but it seems like we're still on the same voice track. So
yeah, it looks like you get a steel case book, 1.1 million CR in-game credit. You get a Toyota GR Yaris with country-specific livery 30 livery. What's that mean? It's country okay.
Livery, so you get a skin basically. So
okay.
So somebody's asking in the chat, why is there so concern for how many SKUs there is? So Capono, just I would say that from a consumer perspective, the issue with multiple SKUs for a game is, number one. Well, I won't talk about the people complaining. It's just confusing pricing, right? Whenever there's multiple SKUs, right, for a game, you have to dig into the details and figure out what it is you're getting and decide which version you want to have to buy, and it just makes it overly convoluted. In some cases, right, if I go back to say the Killer Instinct business model, right, what frustrated me with that on the Xbox One was the way that they sold it. There was a time where there was no way to just buy everything at one flat price, right? So it was always some goofy like 12, 13 different ways to buy the thing, and you were never certain which content you were getting, which I think Destiny 2 suffers from a little bit quite frequently, when it's not patently clear and obvious to you like what version of a thing you need to buy given what version you bought last time. So that's the only reason I brought up this, and I was seeing if they were packaging it in a way that got rid of the whole angst over the $10 upgrade. But I'm a huge racing game fan. I have a Thrustmaster T300 RS racing wheel and pedal set that I just broke out a couple weeks ago to start playing Forza. I've had it forever, but I hadn't hooked it up. So I'm a big racing fan. I really love these games. I have not been a huge fan of the Gran Turismo franchise as of late. I felt like Gran Turismo 5 had a very convoluted campaign progression model. Gran Turismo 6 corrected a lot of that, but of course, for whatever reason, Sony released it a month after they released it for the PlayStation 3, a month after for the PlayStation 3 only, a month after they released the PlayStation 4, which meant it basically got ignored. And then I was not a fan of Gran Turismo Sport. So for me, I mean, I've never had any question about the graphical fidelity of Gran Turismo. So it obviously met that mark this time. The questions that are outstanding for me are the campaign. It seems like they've packed a little bit more of kind of the whimsy in here, talking about the music rally mode that's available at the start at least. So I'll have to see how that goes. But really, it comes down to, right, is the campaign not some Byzantine like thing, Minotaur maze that I have to figure out how to progress? Does it not have these like optimistically locked branches that make it like impossible to progress forward unless you like get a license in a certain class to complete a certain event? And whether or not it's just relatively wide and open and allows you to kind of proceed through the campaign as you choose to, which is kind of what the Forza Horizon layout is. And then the other reason, I don't. You mentioned, that some people feel that I don't necessarily feel that Forza Horizon is necessarily the better game. It's just what I look at it is I just look at, and this is a problem Sony has admitted, right, that they want to take a hard look at the productivity and the output pace of their high-ranking studios. And I've commented on the show before how like I kind of don't get it that like Polyphony gets to apparently do whatever the hell it is that they want to do as far as how frequently they put a game out, kind of in Square Enix fashion. And I don't get it because it seems like all the other Sony studios are told, get a game out like every X number of years. So I kind of just don't understand that. And it's just the matter that you look at the Gran Turismo lineage and you have, 7.5, 8 games, however you want to count it, over a time frame that, Playground and Turn 10, which admittedly is 2 studios, and they've done a whole TikTok, development release cycle, which makes absolute sense. Is a pair of teams that have put out 2 to 3 times as many games, right, in relatively the same time. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not, like I said, the campaign. I was up on the campaign that it was kind of heading towards the traditional model, but then they brought up this whole cafe card system thing, and I was just like sunk my head, and I'm like that seems like some kind of weird thing instead of just a straight stick. I mean, what they presented first was like what I always love in a racing game, and it's like just give me a bunch of cars and a bunch of tracks and a bunch of things to unlock, right? And let me go wheel to wheel, head to head, and compete for the race. And my placement on the race leads me to unlock the next thing. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. The license center is back, which is sometimes okay, but sometimes the specific way they structure it can be a pain. So. Graphically great. I'll have to wait and let it see and hit and get out in the wild and kind of hear what some of the feedback is from people who have some time in it.
Yeah. So let me ask you something, Gimachi, because again, I said this earlier, the discussion that I'm not a racing fan, stretch of the imagination, but I've seen people compare, Forza Motorsport in particular, kind of like has dethroned Gran Turismo. Would you say that statement is true, or is it a matter of just personal taste?
I think it's a matter of personal taste. The big takeaway for me, I mean, I mentioned a couple of my other kind of nits or whatever with the Gran Turismo series. One of the big slides for me from Gran Turismo has been, I played Gran Turismo 1 on the original PlayStation, and other people may have a different impression. So this is just my perspective and what I felt my experience was. I felt like in the early instantiations of Gran Turismo, tuning made a huge difference. Like you would go, literally I would go and race a race. You had to finish in the top 3 to progress. I would come in 4th. I would be like nose to nose with the guy in 3rd, right? And then I would go in and tune, and you would eke out just those 2 extra seconds that you needed, right? Get a corner a little bit better, and you would get in the top 3. And so tuning was a very big thing for me in Gran Turismo 1 and 2. And then it seemed like as the series progressed, tuning had less and less fidelity of impact on your actual race results, and it really just became a matter of like flat out horsepower. And it really just became a matter of, if you stepped up to the line with a car that had more horsepower than everyone else, and sometimes it had to be like 10 horsepower over or whatever, then that's really what determined, your race outcome. I felt like tuning made less and less of a difference. And so that level of fidelity is what kind of bothered me and kind of turned me off to the series as it went on. I feel like the thing that's going on in the conversation, the discussion around it, is just simply the matter that Forza is more prolific in the numbers of chapters and installments that it outputs, and it winds up just being in the zeitgeist and occupying more of people's cognitive time as far as a news headline goes. In Gran Turismo, when you put out an infrequent number of releases, and then those releases, let's just say two of those releases weren't great, that's a larger percentage of the total you've put out, and a larger percentage of the headlines that you're not grabbing.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, I think so it sounds like then, like them going away from the tuning aspect of the game kind of hurt the game then, right? And was that kind of the general consensus then amongst the people, the community in Gran Turismo? Like, wait a minute, like, this isn't good.
I'm not really sure, because I mean, by the time like the prevalence of Twitter and everything was coming up, I'm not really sure what the internet's opinion of it was. I mean, the tuning is still there. But my thing is, I just feel like the tuning had less and less of an impact on actual race results over time. I just felt like when somebody came up to the line and was just, had greater horsepower than you, like, you could tune all day and it wouldn't make a difference. Whereas I felt like back in the day, you could tune a car so that you could corner better than other people, and that might be the difference, right, between you and a race, even against cars with greater horsepower.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, look, like I said, I'm going to be picking up this game. I'm not going to get knee deep in it. My kids are going to be playing this. Actually, both my sons. My 7-year-old actually wants to get into racing games now too. Because obviously he's seeing his older brother do it. So, but yeah, like I said, this game, it looked great. I mean, it looked really impressive. I mean, it's a beautiful looking game. I was just really, really, really impressed. And I got to go back and watch the videos. I know you mentioned you saw the kind of the playback. So I think was it the playback video? Was that uncompressed? Because I think they were showing compressed. We were watching it live. It was compressed, but was it uncompressed like 4K when you watched it back again?
I'm not 100% sure. I didn't even check because I didn't have much time, so I just wanted to check it out, see what was going on. I didn't even check the resolution to see what it was.
It's a good looking video, and I should comment like on the same things that you said, BRAP. Right, like I do really like one of my favorite Need for Speed games ever was Porsche Unleashed, because they had a lot of the stuff that Gran Turismo is going to have in it. They had all the historical background and like classic race events, and like you could go back and you could read about like the personalities and the engineers, and even some of that was in the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit update, right, where they had like the little excerpts there when you selected your vehicle. So all that stuff is great, especially for big gearheads, and I love that stuff. So that that'll be a plus in the series. So hopefully this will land on solid footing with regard to the things that I haven't been happy about before.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, look, Game Logic, glad you kind of dived into that a little bit for us too, because like I said, I'm not the racing expert here. That's just not my thing, man. So I certainly appreciate the insight. I do want to move on to something else here. As relates to some more PlayStation news. Let me hold on a sec here. So Sony is actually going to release 2 live services games by 2026. So now,
you said 2. Supposed to be 10.
What's that?
You said 2.
Did I say 2?
You did.
I'm sorry, I meant 10. Oh my god, dude, I'm losing my mind. Sorry about that, B.
That's all good, man.
I'm like, because I'm chatting, I'm reading the chat at the same time. Clearly, I can't multitask today, right? Yeah, so Sony plans to release. Yeah, so thank you, B. Sony plans to release 10, not 2, 10 live service PlayStation games by 2026. And this was announced during a recent earnings call where Sony discusses acquisition of Bungie, and that's where that's revealed this plan to do so. So, what do you guys think about this? Now, a true Twitter fashion, this thing was kind of blown out of proportion. People were like, "Oh, Sony's gonna, they're gonna drop the ball. They're gonna get they're not, they're gonna take their eye off the prize. They're not gonna be able to do the single player stuff that they're known for, et cetera, et cetera." And yeah, I don't agree with that by any stretch of the imagination. So I'll go to you, Game Logic. Game Logic, what were your thoughts of this announcement? Like how big is this for Sony? Because I think this has kind of been we'll get into the acquisition of Bungie in a little bit, but I think this has obviously been a missing, kind of a missing piece in their portfolio of content.
I guess it is. I think you and I were talking before, and on one hand, first of all, I knew that this was going to set off fear grenades all over the place, right? With people saying,
predictable, right?
Yeah, they've lost their mojo, they're changing their tune, they're going to be somebody different, yada yada yada. And I think, and I've had to reflect on this a lot this week. Is actually I'm in a circle of friends who've been very divided on their opinions of this, and a lot of people are viewing, kind of extrapolating the potential results to the absolute worst case, right? And declaring, and as we've talked before, I don't have a great healthy respect for prophesizing, right? Nobody's risen from their grave and brought the tablets down from the mountain and granted anybody visions of the future of the gaming industry. So that
not yet, at least.
Right. That type of stuff just kind of loses traction with me. But what I've thought about this week and what I've been conveying to people is I just think that in general, in order to make the industry go, there has to be variety. It would be really great. It would be awesome if any big company, right, could sell one kind of game and hope and believe that there were enough consumers who would buy that thing that's all that they had to do. That'd be a wonderful world, right? It would be great for me, who works at a software development company, right, to go in and only have to focus on building one thing, right? That would be awesome, right? But that's not the way that the world is, and I don't believe that's the way the gaming industry is. And we talked, I think last week or maybe a couple of weeks ago, two episodes ago, and a lot of people were raising up, when I said the breadth of the Sony single player games only goes but so far. And people were saying, they sold 20 million copies. It seems like, those attract, tons of gamers. And I'm like, hold on, right? The Sony PlayStation installation base is probably at least 140 million, right? So if 20 million people bought, The Last of Us 2 or Ratchet and Clank or, Uncharted, whatever, that's still 14 to 15%, right, of the entire install base. Right? And I mean, what do you think the business optics would be on releasing top tier products, right? And saying, hey, 14% of our user base bought this thing, right? I don't know that that's a resounding argument, right? To say that that's all that we need in our portfolio. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee you that it's not a resounding argument, right? Around a boardroom table, right? So them pushing out the envelope into greater diversification of a portfolio definitely, obviously makes business sense. And kind of like we've talked about metaphors and analogies to other industries, I don't think that Sony making 10 live service games means that they'll stop doing the other stuff or the other stuff will get worse. Right?
I just, Gabe, I don't mean to interrupt you, Electric. As you're talking about this, man, I just don't understand how people... it. You ever see the movie? What's the movie? Was it Office Space?
Yeah.
Remember the jump to conclusions, Matt?
Oh, right.
Is it I'm starting to think that that's a real thing. Like it's like it's mind blowing to me. Like I even said on Twitter today, I'm like I just can't take the hot takes anymore. But anyhow, I'm sorry, man. Go ahead.
Right. No, and I mean, I mean, I want to give credit where credit's due. Like, I at least some, like I think some people who are coming to this conclusion, they're not necessarily only the hot, like tons of the hot takes are that too as well. But I actually think that some people who are giving this a lot of thought, right, are thinking that it's going that way. And I just like, look, Ford makes electric vehicles. You can still go buy, right? What I don't even remember what they are now. What it's the Mustang up to 365 horsepower, right? You can still go buy a 365 horsepower Mustang, right? We make these three-wheel motorcycle-looking things now, right? But you could still go buy a YZF-R1, right, and crotch rocket around all you want to. Like, I don't necessarily know that a shift, and a shift is going to have impact, but I don't necessarily know that it's the death knell, right, for a thing. The thing that's weirdest to me about the Sony Bungie acquisition is it clearly has to be a thing that was under discussion, I think, since at least the Bethesda deal announcement from Microsoft. It seems to feel like a counter move. It seems that some of the press that I've been reading was that it was a protect move to make sure that Microsoft didn't, turn their eye like the eye of Sauron right onto Bungie, which I don't.
They almost feel like Microsoft almost feels like the eye of Sauron right now with like kind of like glancing at the landscape of publishers and studios. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Right.
Yeah.
But the two things that are weird to me is Bungie doesn't feel like a Sony studio. That feels like the dude who shows up at the party with the girlfriend and you see the two of them together and you're like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Right. And then my other comment, as I mentioned in your chat earlier this week when you did the pop-up podcast on this the day it was announced, is I'm like, Bungie's been married and divorced twice. Now they're like, is that the bride that you want to remarry like the third time around? And I know Activision didn't buy them, but it was a monogamous relationship, right? They weren't seeing other people. So, I just don't know. It seems like a weird kind of thing. And then the announcement that none of it's going to go exclusive, which I applaud. I'm happy for, but it's just weird. Maybe a thing that they're going to do is expand Bungie to another studio and have them work on another IP beyond Destiny 2. And maybe that thing will be either, if not exclusive, will at least be something that is more kind of oriented around the Sony brand that you would think.
Yeah. Yeah. Great points, Game Logic. I think they could walk and chew gum at the same time, And clearly, and we'll get into you brought up a great point about the Bungie acquisition. Doesn't seem like, the acquisition Sony's, the types of acquisitions or the types of studios Sony typically acquires from, I guess, a relationship standpoint. But we could talk about that later on.
It doesn't feel as native as the Insomniac purchase.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not as organic as they say. But yeah, B, what are your thoughts about this, man? Like, are you... because obviously, I mean, they've done live service games before, like SOCOM was a thing for a little bit. But what are your thoughts about this, B?
The SOCOM wasn't a live service game. And the thing is,
well, that's true.
I done told y'all about this for many, many months. Nobody wanted to listen.
Well, you did. What did you say about Jim Ryan?
Told y'all when Jim Ryan took over, man, this shit was gonna happen. We'll just, wave me off, act like I didn't know what I was talking about. Guess what? Happening right in front of our eyes. Told y'all that stuff like this was gonna happen. Everybody was worried about multiplayer games and we haven't heard anything about multiplayer games. Sony's getting stumped out. Microsoft got all the multiplayer games, and I told y'all they was coming. Just listen to what I say. Absorb my information. I told y'all about this. It's coming. The Bungie thing was, kind of came out of left field, but me, I think it was a smart purchase. They aren't, directly roped into PlayStation Studios. They kind of sit beside them. So it's not just like a PlayStation thing. It's more of a Sony deal. But as far as the 10 live service games potentially being released by 2026, that's just the business. That's the business that we're in. Look at all the most popular games right now.
Yeah,
They're
they're
all
all
live service games.
yeah
They're
for
they're
the
all they're all
Fortnites.
they're,
Yeah,
yeah, they're all the games that bring in the most money. Why you
that's a
think
good point.
Why you think Rockstar haven't talked about no GTA 6?
They don't need to
Why? They don't
because they
need
don't
to.
need to. Yeah,
People have been buying GTA 5 since 2013.
yeah.
We almost 10 years in,
I mean, B
and
wasn't that game
people still buying it.
wasn't that game charting NPD for like 8 years after
Yeah,
release?
exactly. So you know what I mean. That's just the business that we in.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody who's scared, thinking Sony's switching up, they won't have single player games anymore. PlayStation that you love isn't going to be the same PlayStation in 5 years. Jim Ryan's ruining PlayStation. No, Ryan is taking PlayStation to a different stratosphere. I told y'all this.
You did
He
say
took
that.
over.
Yeah, you did say that from the beginning. Yeah, I remember that. I remember when people were upset that he took over for Sean Layden, and you were like, "Wait a minute, there's a reason for this." Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, you've been saying this for a long time. That's why I keep telling people if you're not listening to listen to when B Money speaks.
And and a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't understand." The whole deal or whatever. And we'll understand it a little further down the line. But like I've been telling people, this is all about a revenue play.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like Sony didn't have they don't have a Sea of Thieves. You know what I mean? They don't have a game that's breaking out millions and millions of dollars after release. You know what I mean? Once they sold those 20 million copies of Spider-Man or whatever the case is. But you know what I mean? Like once you buy it, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more missions to buy. There's no more, you know what I mean? Like all the suits and shit, they gave that shit to us for free. You know what I mean? Like we didn't have to go, buy new suits or whatever. You know what I mean? They weren't doming us like all these other companies were. You know what I mean? So they took it on the chin. They realized like, yo, we can do it our way. You know what I mean? We could still make live service games and we don't have to be some of the earth. You know what I mean? So they're coming. Just gotta wait on them. They coming.
Yeah. It's what's interesting too is that clearly this has been something that they've been working on because to have 10 games by 2026. I mean that's 4 years from now, right? So this is something that's been in pipeline. You got to imagine for some time now. So yeah, I'm excited.
We also have to
Go ahead.
remember, like, people are like, "Oh, this isn't organic. This isn't how they, Bungie isn't somebody that they work with." Y'all gotta understand, Bungie been working with PlayStation since Destiny's launch. They were locking off content from another console since the game launched. I do realize that, right? They've been working with them
Yeah,
since
no, you're right. Yeah,
one launched. You know what I mean? So like, oh, this isn't organic. No, they've been working for 10 years, bro.
yeah. I mean,
I've been at.
I think there's still strikes that never made their way to the Xbox platform. They were
Right.
supposed to
Yeah,
eventually make their way after a
exactly.
year, and then there was the legendary Pistol of the Hawk Moon, which was great on the PlayStation. When it finally came over the Xbox, it was
It was
nerfed so
bullshit.
bad it was worthless.
Yeah.
Great on the PlayStation, but not so much on the Xbox. I'm gonna say that was the case. Was the Last Word one of those pistols that was locked behind PlayStation for a little bit? I don't
believe it
remember.
was. Yep.
And I think that wasn't as good as it was when it was on the PlayStation, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, no, I mean, that's we'll talk about again about Bungie a little bit more. But that's a great
Yeah,
point about
but
the existing relationship. Yeah, go ahead, man.
I'm excited about what Sony's future holds as far as, what I mean, they're doubling down on PlayStation. And this is something that, a lot of people just,
Mm-hmm.
they take for granted, you know what I mean? Because PlayStation has been so great for so long. They've released, these big name titles and all of that. And they've kind of stood on the square, you know what I mean? When Sean Layden was there, he talked about it many times. Like he didn't go to the studios and say, "Hey, you need to make this type of game." Da da da.
No, he didn't. No.
But like I told y'all before, like that was a mistake. Yes, it was great that we had all those, these big titles, the God of Wars, the Last of Us, all of that. I mean, they sold multi millions of copies. but it left them a hole. It left them in a hole. They had no more. They had no multiplayer games. No big multiplayer games that were substantial to talk about last generation. What one could we name? There isn't one. Now they're in a hole. Now they have to go spend almost $4 billion to, you know what I mean, bring a studio in so they can give them some assistance on how to build out these live service games.
Mm-hmm.
That mistake cost them $4 billion.
That's an interesting perspective. I never looked at it. I never thought to look at it that way. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, Yeah, that's a lot of money. $4 billion. Yeah. So this news came out again, during this earnings call. And again, I mean, for me, my take, I'm excited. I'm excited to see them kind of venture into other things now, right? I mean, we know how well they do that, over the shoulder, third person action adventure game. They are, if you want that kind of game, in my opinion, that's Sony's the place to have those kind of great experiences, right? So yeah, this is going to be this is going to be an exciting generation. I think I said this, this. What's up, T-Rock? I said this last week that that this is we have Microsoft now. They're acquiring things and they're trying to bid out their platform, and there's a lot of potential things to be excited for there. We know Nintendo's kind of firing on all cylinders, and then now we have Sony and the news of them having these 10 games, and I can't recall a time, and I know Game Logic, you've been gaming just a little bit longer than I have, but this kind of feels like I can't remember a time where we had like 3 platforms just thriving like this. I could be wrong, but I don't recall any of that. Like, does this feel like a golden age of gaming?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you could say it. I mean, just simply from the revenue perspective, right? The gaming industry is larger than it's ever been before, and I think that's a big part of it, which is just, I guess, kind of natural evolution. I think what's particularly interesting as we enter this time is, lots of acquisitions being made. I understand that that makes people, a lot of people less happy. But part of what it seems like is going on is we have gotten, I shouldn't say past, but we've hit some points where we've made the acquisitions to wrap our arms around that content and play keep away, right? And now we're moving on to this era of making acquisitions and then potentially allowing things to still go multi-platform, which, if you extrapolate that into the future, again, I talk about, Sony releases games that are closely identifiable with its brand and they sell 20 million copies. So it'd be hard for me to understand the investment intention to build 10 live service games of at least which some are not multi-platform. And so we may be sliding into this era that we kind of had at the outset of the last console generation, where there's a question about how much exclusives really matter, right? If there's multiple Sony games that can be played on the Microsoft platform and multiple Microsoft games that can be played on the Sony platform, then kind of the way I think about it, where I ascribe any of that identification to the development studio and not to the platform or the publisher, that may become what's prevalent, right? And what you may get is people who orient around a Naughty Dog game or a Sucker Punch game, and obviously those exist on the Sony platform, but that's kind of how people think about it more than those being SIE games, because both of those two big console manufacturers will be publishing games that will be played on each other's platform.
Yeah,
maybe we'll see an end to the console warring.
I don't think we'll ever see that. I don't think that's possible. They'll war about something else, Game Logic. They will they'll figure something else to war about, man.
Most certainly.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly.
one can dream.
Yeah, one can dream, right? Let me grab the super chat here real quick from Neo Wise with the $5 super chat. It says Sony didn't buy Bungie for the IP; they bought them for the talent and know-how, so they can help speed up the production of their own live service games. It's a great point, Neo Wise. We'll discuss that as well in a little bit, but I do want to touch upon something else that Jim Ryan said as it relates to the Sony acquisition, the acquisition of Bungie, and that, like basically expect more announcements like this, right? So that begs the question, and everyone was, and again, I mean, we did this when Microsoft acquired Activision, kind of the who's next, right? And so now with PlayStation and Sony, who's next? Who are they going to go out and buy? Who makes sense for Sony to acquire? Now, obviously, I think there's some obvious ones. I think, in my opinion, one would be Square Enix, given the relationship there, and that Final Fantasy, since Final Fantasy VII, by the way, at the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII, which is just blows my mind. I was 20 years old when that game came out. I came in, just yeah. No, I mean that, Final Fantasy for the most part. I know Final Fantasy 15 was multi-plat, but for the most part, that series has been kind of synonymous now with the PlayStation brand for the last 25 years, being it was taken away from Nintendo. But they've had a really, strong partnership. I think Sony even at some point kind of helped bail them out of some financial issues, I think. But that's one, and maybe
about Square.
Yeah, Square. I'm sorry, not Square Enix this time, because it was just SquareSoft. Yes. Yeah. So when I say Square Enix, I'm really referring to SquareSoft more than Enix, right? Yeah. Thank you, B. Because that's actually it's actually important to kind of make that distinction, because there was a SquareSoft before Square and Enix came together. But Capcom maybe being the other one, because Capcom is. They have the exclusivity with Street Fighter V, and there's Evo and all that. And there's there are other ones we could probably throw out there as well that they've had some working relationship with, like From Software. But what do you guys think? Like, I mean, if Jim Ryan is saying, hey, you know what, expect more acquisitions, and if he's saying that's probably going to happen, right? Who makes sense to you then? I mean, what do you guys think? Who makes sense for Sony to acquire next?
I mean, I like the From Software pick. That seems to make sense. It would be surprising to me that neither Sony nor Microsoft would pick up Hello Games. Although that guy may just not be willing to sell to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see that make sense for either Microsoft or Sony to go after.
Yeah, and Sony's had a little. I mean, obviously, Hello Games with what's the game they make again? I just drew a blank here.
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky, thank you. Which is now multi-plat, by the way, but did start off PlayStation.
Right, and that's where I can see. And it came to. I mean, maybe B Money can correct. It came to Game Pass. I think I'm pretty sure at some point.
Yeah, it did. It did come to Game Pass. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I can see that. That's why, and it's got a PC presence now, and therefore I could see Microsoft going after that. The other one, again, maybe he may not be willing to sell to them, but it would seem like going after Kojima's company would make sense for Sony.
Yeah, given their history, yeah, Kojima Productions, yeah. Yeah. Any others game logic that you think might make sense for them?
That's about all that I would risk hazarding to guess. I mean, it's like I said, I'm not a huge fan of prognostications. I mean, and when Sony's
come on, man, you got to put on the prophecy hat.
Right. When Jim, I mean, one thing I will say is, when Jim Ryan says, "Hey, I'm going after more studios," like that could very well be like a 10-man mom and pop shop development studio working out of a garage, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going after 10 Bungie size acquisitions or Bethesda size acquisitions or Activision size acquisitions, because again, we're talking about the Sony Corporation, which is all of 156 billion, right? So there's got to be some reasonable leveling of scale of what we would expect them to go after.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, they obviously don't have the war chest, if you will, that Microsoft has, right? So, B, what do you think, man? Like, if you had the blank check, man, you were in Jim Ryan's, chair, in his seat. Like, what would make sense to you, man, for Sony to acquire, or who do you think would make sense for Sony to acquire next?
I mean, as far as making sense, that there's a lot of studios, publishers you could kind of, draw lineage to as far as, PlayStation kind of having huge history with them. Square Enix being, the first one that comes to mind. Um, they've worked with them so closely since, the original PlayStation. And they've continued to release, exclusives for them uh, over the past, 15, 20 years. So that would
Wait,
probably
B,
make the
did you
most
did you
sense.
say there is no PlayStation without them?
Uh, I wouldn't say all that, but
Oh, okay, I thought I heard you say that. Like, because I was gonna say
it's
that's a spicy take, man. I mean, like you could probably say like Final Fantasy VII really, at least in my opinion, really kind of like
it
put
changed the
them on the
game.
map. Yeah, because it was so
It
synonymous with
did.
Nintendo. And then
Right.
seeing that trailer, I remember the commercials on TV with Final Fantasy VII and just being like, "Holy shit! What am I? It's like a movie. What am I watching here?"
Right. Yeah. And y- along with that comes the acquisition of MMO. That's pretty big in the world right now. So what I mean, that's another kind of feather in the cap for Sony if they were to pick that up. Plus, what I mean, you know, you get into branching out into film with some of the Square Enix properties with the Tomb Raider and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that they could extrapolate from acquisition from Square Enix. Capcom is another one that they've worked pretty close with. Which would make sense. Monster Hunter is huge. Street Fighter. I mean, you got some legendary brands there that would make sense for Sony. Um, but the thing is like when you start to look at companies like the Capcoms and Square Enix and things like that, it it makes the thought of the acquisition a little tough for me just because those companies also still work pretty well with Nintendo, and I don't know, what I mean, what that would mean as far as like taking Capcom solely away from everyone else and bringing them in house and Square Enix because like without Capcom Square Enix, man, there's not a lot of third party support for Nintendo.
Yeah,
And they've
Nintendo would be screwed, kind of, right? I
yeah,
mean, you
yeah,
think about
they
Monster
would kind of
Hunter,
put
yeah.
yeah, they would put Nintendo in the hole, and I don't know, I mean, I know that relationship was kind of bitter. Just that's the whole reason why we have a PlayStation today. But
Wait,
I don't
have
know.
they squashed the beef? Like, is that because
I
you're
don't know if
right?
the beef squash, man. I
Because
don't
you're
know if the
right.
beef squash.
We have, for people to know the historical significance of that relationship, and like that's why, like B said, that's why we have a PlayStation, because Nintendo kind of like, I don't want to say screw. I guess would screw be kind of accurate? Kind of screwed Sony
Yeah,
a
they
little
did.
bit.
Yeah, they did some some shady stuff. They didn't want to get down, man. So
Yeah.
that's why we have a PlayStation today. So I don't know, I mean, if there's still bad blood between them. I mean, if they really want to take those companies away from them and take that off the table, then I mean, I kind of look a little further out. I mean, there's other big publishers out there that aren't in the best situation right now, and have lost a lot of market value. Such as Ubisoft, and they have a of
Okay. I'm sorry, B. You just
what I mean, they
something
have a
something to
slew of properties over there that
something
what I mean,
B
could be very valuable to
B
Sony PlayStation.
B. Something tells me it wasn't by accident you mentioned Ubisoft, but I'll just leave it at that. But go ahead, man.
Hey man, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just throwing stuff at the wall, man.
Go ahead, man.
They aren't in the greatest shape. What I mean, they've got their own issues that they gotta iron out over there, and what I mean, those financials ain't looking too good over there, and I mean, they keep releasing the same games over and over and over again that nobody cares about. So, um, you know, there's space and opportunity, I should say, for acquisition like that. So we shall see. You know, what I mean, there's other smaller stuff that Sony could go for that would make sense for them as well. But I think what I mean, with this acquisition that they just made, spending $4 billion, they're definitely not done. They had 22 billion dollars set aside for acquisitions. They've only spent about 5 billion so far with the Crunchyroll acquisition and with this Bungie acquisition. So they got a few coins laying around that they got to spend and get off the books. So I would expect some announcements sooner rather than later. So the cadence of acquisitions they had last year, they did 5 acquisitions, and I would assume that we would kind of be on that same cadence this year.
Interesting. That's interesting. So you're thinking, 5 acquisitions this year, like last year, and B, you mentioned Ubisoft. It's interesting. Ubisoft reminds me maybe somewhat from a cultural perspective, I think somewhat similar to Activision, where we know that Ubisoft has some issues, culturally, internally, right, with the core culture being toxic, stuff like that. And I don't think I think the same people that have enabled that are still in leadership positions at Ubisoft, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm not saying, and I know Game Logic doesn't like to predict things like this, but we're not predicting that Sony's going to buy Ubisoft. But you know what? I mean, at this point, don't assume anything. Nothing surprises me anymore in the gaming industry now in terms of acquisitions. It just doesn't.
What's interesting is Ubisoft's market cap is about 7.2 billion, which puts them underneath Bethesda.
Yep.
And another thing that's interesting is Sega is at about 4 billion market cap and has dropped in its total holdings value, right, by about 2/3 over the last like 12ish years, and just sold off and got out of its arcade footprint, which might be seen as a move to skinny and lean down from any adjacencies to the core competency that would be a lucrative buy for a game publishing company. So, I mean, those are some possibilities. While I comment about how I don't like to, make predictions and then, act like, like I'm a sure bet, right, when I predict those things. What is interesting is one of the predictions I did make is I talked about the rising costs of game development and how we could get to a point where the only people who could really keep up with that were the console manufacturers, and we would see a major dilution of the large third-party publishers, right? Which is kind of, sort of, what it seems like we're headed towards, which is, a big mass consolidation.
Yeah. But does that mass consolidation, I know we talked a little bit about this, Game Logic, does that scare anyone here on the panel? I mean, are you concerned about that?
I mean, to a certain extent, of course, we should all be a little concerned about it as far as, what that consolidation actually means as far as being a consumer. But at the end of the day, people, all the people who've, sold these studios or whatnot, or, you grow to build up a great studio like Activision, and something doesn't go right, and you get Vince Impel out there, and he starts up a Respawn, and
that's a good point.
He takes the world by storm. Releases the Titanfall, then does Apex Legends. Now he's got 3 Star Wars games coming. Now he's So it's like, yeah, we will see some consolidation. In the industry, but all that does is just sprout off more talent. Like somebody is not gonna like it, and they're like, "Oh, yo, I'm leaving. I'm out. Start my own studio." And
Yeah. I mean, we've seen that with BioWare.
Yeah. Look at all the big names at BioWare. All of them have left and start their own thing. So in 5 years, they could be the next, big RPG studio or whatever the case may be. And that's a studio that we're talking about, and that's the studio that we hold in high regard. Look at CD Projekt Red. You know what I mean? Like they released 2 Witcher games. Witcher 3 was a massive success. I mean, had everyone holding them in high regard. Everyone was highly anticipating, you know what I mean, Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was a letdown. It's just, there's pitfalls. There's highs and lows, you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
we'll have massive consolidation, a whole bunch of new studios sprout up. We'll get new games, new ideas, gravitate towards that. And I mean, the cycle continues.
Yeah, there's some concern that people have expressed about maybe the creativity might be stifled if we have this consolidation similar to what we see in the movie business now. That's a concern of mine. Now, again, for the reasons you mentioned, B, and I even think about that, what you just we talked about. You gave the example. We talked about BioWare's example, what's his name? Mike Laidlaw. Who he's doing his own thing now. Some of the other guys that were, instrumental in some of the success of BioWare early on, I mean, have gone on to start new things. You mentioned Vincent Pello, who seems to have a little bit of swag at EA now, starting Respawn. I hope that's the case, B. And there's obviously, you think about the Embracer Group and how they have some of those smaller studios like THQ Nordic, Deep Silver, which is one, I think this is under them, if I'm not mistaken, Deep Silver.
Yeah.
E. Jackson, who couldn't be here tonight, is actually playing a game with them right now, or a game by Deep Silver that I wasn't even aware of, which looks actually pretty cool. So I hope that's not the case, that the creativity is stifled. Game Logic, you were talking about a couple weeks ago. You were saying you brought up the death of the gaming industry. And was it 1983? Right? Was it 83? I don't remember now.
Yeah, I think about thereabouts.
Yeah, and you said that
early 80s,
that there was this lack of quality or something kind of drove the industry over the edge.
Yeah, what we got into is we got into a cycle of shovelware, that the industry was putting out and they just kind of overloaded the industry and really turned consumer interest off. Right, it was incredibly difficult to find and understand what a good game was. I mean, I think in some cases we're not going to see that now because we have online and internet journalism and the speed with which and the formality and the discipline and the structure and the societal norms, right? The pop culture norms that we've become accustomed to in terms of game journalism, right? Which, and I'm the first one to tell you I'm not a fan of game journalism. Is just more prevalent now, and so I don't think we would see thousands of low quality games kind of leak out, right, and catch consumers unawares. However, you and I have been going back and forth about this line. I'm trying to find it now. Probably gonna struggle to find it. About this bit from a developer named Vogel, who has been commenting on Twitter about how there are just too many games on Steam, right? And the rise of proliferation on games on Steam over the last 4 years has gone from 6,500 to 8,300, dipped down to 8,100, but then up to about 10,000, and now we're at about 12,000 games being released per year, right? On the Steam Stormfront.
Wait, how many games?
12,000 last year.
On Steam?
On Steam.
Jesus.
Right? Now,
how many of those 12,000 did you play last year, Enrique?
None. That's what I'm saying. That's nuts. I can I'm thinking it's a couple hundred games. I'm thinking maybe 1,000 games, right? That's it. But 12,000? Jesus. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Game Logic.
No. Right. And of course, a lot of those were, match 3 games or kind of tic-tac-toe games, right, that are released because indies can kind of sort of publish whatever they want on the Steam storefront, right? And there's a definite argument that that's a negative knock-on effect, right, of over democratization of publishing, right, and putting content out. And there are lots of people spewing a lot of hate at Vogel, but I mean I think he has some good points, right? Do we need it? Is it good for the industry? It's certainly helpful for certain people, but it certainly, I think, says a lot of different things about American society and about American industry and about American company leadership and why we have this feeling that everybody wants to be, it may sound hypocritical because we're here sitting on YouTube, but why kids think that they want to grow up to be YouTubers because that's the way they're going to make a living, even though, as I constantly tell people, YouTubers don't have healthcare. So,
It's a great point,
but
man.
I mean, but it causes this whole malaise of like people who feel like, well, I don't want to work a 9 to 5, and there's something bad about that. So let me go be an independent game developer, right? And that creates this thing, right? And the Steam storefront suffers from it. Like I find the Steam storefront absolutely useless, right? As far as discovery and finding new games, I find that I have to go other places to kind of conduct my search. I've my Steam wish list has crested over above 100 several times, right, over the last 15 or 16 years, and I've gone through and entirely deleted it, right, at least 8 times, right, because it's just gotten to a point where it's absolutely useless, and I'm only looking at the games that are like in my windshield, right, and making a decent quality cut. So he's not lying that I think that there's potentially a problem. By the same token, industry consolidation is a natural cyclical effect, particularly in a capitalist economy, that occurs as an industry matures, right? It just so happens that we are probably now sitting on that tip over point. And it will happen, and good things will come of it, and bad things will come of it, and then there will be, industry corrections that will reverse that trend, right? And good things and bad things will come out of that. But the point is that the industry will evolve, and it will always be interesting to watch it occur. And there's always going to be good games, right, that come out of it.
Yeah. Game Lodge, it's a great point. Like you talk about the maturation of the industry. I mean, I think that's, again, I've been gaming 40 years since I was 5 years old. I mean, obviously I don't remember the industry per se at 5, but I've experienced, gaming over the last 40 years, and it really is changing. Like you could just see it. Like if you've been doing it this long as we have, it's plain as day. There's clearly, especially this year, the first month of the year, right? There's clearly a shift. Something's happening, right, in the industry. And we're hearing terms now like metaverse, right? NFTs. Those are newer things that are now tied to the gaming landscape, right? That weren't things a couple years ago. Which and the interesting thing, as I mentioned, metaverse, and I was thinking about, we should probably talk about Sony acquiring Bungie now. And I know B Money, you mentioned this too about in the BRAP DM, but let me get the super chat real quick from JD Gamer. JD Gamer with a $10 super chat. Thank you, JD. Says CDPR would be a great pickup for Sony. They're great storytellers, and Cyberpunk is a rich world full of stories to tell. And that's something Sony can use not just in games but the rest of their media too. That's actually a great point. We've seen the success of actually The Witcher on Netflix, which is a really good show. But with the acquisition of Bungie partnering with Sony or being acquired by Sony, I think part of what Bungie wants to do is get into that. Oh wow, you know what? YouTube's really acting up, by the way. I just saw one person watching now. It just went back up. That's wild. But with this deal now, I mean, Bungie has the opportunity, and I think they wanted to take Destiny, outside of just, being a platform on PC and consoles, but, kind of expand into maybe movies and TVs. And if you think about the metaverse and what that means for games and having this, cross-pollination of comics maybe, or merchandising, or TVs, movies. I mean, Sony can offer someone the opportunity to do those things, especially on the movie and TV side of things, right? And I don't think that's something that people necessarily talk about a lot as relates to Sony. And I actually think that potentially could be, depending on the publisher or developer, could be I think maybe a selling point that Sony says, or has, hey, you want to build out, your franchise, or your IP outside of a game that we could potentially offer you or help you do those things, because we're in movie and television. So, but I thought that was kind of interesting about Bungie, because that was something that they have, were kind of interested in as well. And then Sony with, Bungie being able to help them with, more live services type games and whatnot. So, but you mentioned this earlier, Game Logic, and again, Sony picked up Bungie for $3.6 billion. And there's interesting. There was some debate about, and I saw this online. People were saying, "Oh, they paid too much." What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think that Sony paid too much? I mean, first of all, like, how will we know they paid too much, right? I mean, I don't think. I mean, I've heard different numbers regarding the value of Bungie. I've heard anywhere from $2 billion to $4 billion, but I mean, again, I haven't seen anything concrete per se. But what do you guys think? Like, do you think they did pay? Do you think they paid too much for Bungie?
I think you got to pay a premium just because of everything that's been going on over the last year or two. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's rumblings that Microsoft was going to buy them initially, but Bungie was kind of asking for a little bit too much, and Microsoft decided to go a different route or whatever the case is. So yeah, I mean, I believe they probably worth around $2 billion. They paid a little bit more, but I think it came out today that they have a $1.2 billion retention fund for all the employees there. So they decide to leave, they can kind of open that up a little bit and ensure that that those employees stay there. So they spent a little bit more money, but you got to understand it's not just for you know the one game of Destiny. You know what I mean, they have other stuff under wraps. That'll be announced over the next year or two. That are coming. This total investment studios that she they like to collaborate amongst the studios. They all learn from each other. So this was a big investment, and I don't think they paid too much. I mean, they paid a little bit more than probably what they should have, but if they can, they'll get it back tenfold.
Mm-hmm. Game Logic, what are your thoughts, man?
It's tough to say. Of course, Bungie is not a publicly traded company, right? So it's tough to nail down what the exact value of their assets, right, and liabilities are. And so there's also not great information on their earnings. So I mean, it's a toss-up guess on whether or not they paid too much. It feels like no. Again, it's a very big studio. And if you want to hang a medallion around what their key value is to me, and I know B-Money said it's not the value of the one franchise, but what resonates in my head is that they have been the developer who has put it on lock what this model of a game as a service really is, right? And you can argue and debate what the success of Destiny is and whether it's a good game and people enjoy it or not, but they've built a model that has essentially doubled the size of that studio, right, over the course of time. And many, many, many publishers who are very much larger than Bungie have been chasing that model, right? Anthem wanted to do something like that. Halo is trying to do something like that. People talk about a Destiny-like game, right? And they're talking about the revenue model, not necessarily the mechanics. And that's a significant thing. And if, acquiring them gives Sony the gray matter, right? The intelligence to teach and convey to everyone, maybe how to do that. Although, again, I'm highly suspicious of the success of any one organization. I always think that that's an anecdotal convergence of talent, opportunity, and pure luck that can't readily be replicated like some rule book. But it is what it is, and that could potentially be a value, and that may be what Sony. The one concern about what we talked about before is Sony talking about cranking out 10 games. I mean, 10 live service games in a period of time is a lot. And many, many, many of these today fail, right? The failure rate of live service games that come out kind of reminds me of the restaurant industry in America, right? Which we have new restaurants pop up all the time, and very, very, very few, an incredibly small few percentage, remain viable business concerns for anything longer than 6 to 8 months. And we have slews of live service games that come out that people rah-rah and cheerlead about how what their concurrent user base is right in the first month, and like 6 months later, like nobody's playing that game. So it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be interesting if that pace yields successes, or if Sony is banking on a certain amount of failures, which would be prudent. And what they do with those, because what we saw in the PlayStation 3 era was when studios didn't make the commercial success that was projected, right? Those studios were closed.
Yeah, no, and that's actually you think about not just that, but there were some projects that didn't get greenlit either with Sony. Like if you think about not Death Stranding, what's the motorcycle game?
Motorcycle game.
The Sony Days Gone. Thank you.
Oh, Days Gone.
Yeah. And Sony shut that down. Like we know the story of them pitching, a sequel to that, and Sony's like, we're not doing it. So, but yeah, I just thought it was an interesting conversation about that's why I wanted to ask you and Game Electric and UB Money, because that's something that I saw that kind of they overpaid, but I kind of agree with what both of you are saying, and I think we're obviously not going to see the fruits of this acquisition for years. So, but I do want to go back to a point real quick, and let me just grab this super chat from JD Gamer quickly. JD Gamer, the $10 super chat. Thank you again, JD. Appreciate that. Says Sony has to share their biggest cash cow with Marvel Spider-Man. Imagine Sony creating new characters, new worlds, new communities around those worlds, and then being the complete entertainment hub. It's a great point.
My only concern about this, and you and I talked about this, right? That Jim Ryan talked about the Bungie acquisition was a metaverse play, and I completely readily agree that I personally am far more interested in the notion of Destiny movies or a Destiny, streaming television thing that comes out like 10 episodes at a time, right? So it's kind of high quality ish, in kind of these Netflix Hulu models, but. And look, you can hate me if I say this, but I just feel like, having spent time as a movie reviewer, right? I just feel like Sony movie studios are completely and entirely inept. We had that whole thing of like their cybersecurity compromise, where all the emails were leaked of like the way they were making deals and the conversations that they had, and just the total nincompoopness that ran around that organization. Like I don't think it's a big crown jewel like to raise up and like put in great faith that Sony Entertainment studios are gonna take these IPs and do something with them. Quite honestly, I hope if the PlayStation division gets a hold of them, the PlayStation division is the highest earning profit center of the Sony Corporation, that quite honestly that they farm them out and don't put them in the hands of those yokels at the Sony movie studios, because they stink stuff up just as bad as Fox was, and Fox's final capitulation was just to sell out to Disney. So I just hope that's the direction it's going, rather than putting those things in the hands of Sony Studios.
So you're saying you have no faith in Sony Studios, more or less. Right. Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I mean, no, I get it. But I think they're doubling down on Sony Studios right now. I think I may have read that somewhere. I don't remember, but you mentioned Fox. Sony was interested in acquiring Fox Entertainment before that deal happened with Disney. So,
and I tell you, who Microsoft and Sony really need to buy, if they could buy him, would be somebody just needs to buy Henry Cavill, right? and make that guy your IP, right? Because whatever that guy touches is, he had his years of struggles, right? The Man from U.N.C.L.E. remake, right, or reboot was like not great, but you can see the shine on Henry Cavill in that. And like right now, whatever that guy touches is gold. Like if Rockstar gets a hold of him and they do a Red Dead Redemption 2, right, that's going to be huge. So just buy Henry Cavill.
That is funny. Well, look what he's done with, The Witcher. We talked about, Witcher on Netflix.
Yep.
He is, to me, he is like, I like him better than Geralt in the video game. And I know some people
Right.
think I'm crazy for saying that, but I just do.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, he's what do they have his likeness now in or maybe there's a mod that has his likeness, will put his likeness in The Witcher 3.
Oh, is there? I didn't know
Like
that.
yeah, I can't remember if it's a mod or if it's an official patch. Not to make him Geralt, but to make him some other Witcher. So it'll be, I would be surprised if they revisit The Witcher and they don't put Henry Cavill's likeness in the game.
Yeah, I think they kind of have. I mean, I would like to see that again. I really do like him as Geralt in in the Netflix. Like I was a little like I don't know about him. He's Superman. I don't know how. But then like when I remember when I watched episode 1 season, when I was like, oh okay, like he's got this. And the thing is, he actually loves the video game. Plays video games, so he's really into the role of Geralt. So, but I just lost my train of thought now. Yeah. So back to the acquisition of Bungie. I think it was you, Game Logic, mentioned this kind of isn't the kind of acquisition Sony would typically make. Now I know B, you mentioned, well, maybe it kind of is, given the relationship, but Game Logic, were you kind of surprised by this announcement then? Just given, kind of Sony, how Sony's kind of more has acquired, studios in the past?
Wasn't yeah, I mean, maybe admittedly ish. Like I wasn't surprised at the acquisition. I was just surprised that it was, I guess, Bungie. Like I said, it's taken me a while to wrap my head around. Like I said, it's just dissimilar from the Insomniac acquisition, and that's the only thing I kind of meant by that, really.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, I think for I kind of
I mean, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Like, so BRAP, right? What formulates most moves to do acquisitions and teaming in our industry, right, is you have your set of capabilities, right, and what part of the market you're covering, and you look at people to fill the gaps. And so what B Money was saying, like, Bungie absolutely helps fill gaps, right, in the Sony portfolio. So the deal makes sense. It just it caught me off guard, just as far as I didn't necessarily think it was going to be Bungie going down that chute. Just again, having had so many relationships in the past, I thought Bungie was on the path to being a permanent bachelor, but that appears to not be the case.
No, exactly. And the one thing what's wild is that you think about. I think the obvious for me, that I guess the immediate my immediate reaction to that announcement was, wow, this is, if you would have told me 20 years ago, right, in 2002, that Bungie was going to be owned by Sony one day, I would have laughed hysterically at you and be like, you are crazy, right? Like, this is never going to happen. And if you told me, 25 years ago that Crash Bandicoot would be owned by Microsoft, I would have laughed in your face too. And here we are in 2022, and Microsoft in fact owns the IP now for Crash through Activision, and Microsoft and now Sony owns Bungie. So, but it's interesting regarding Sony's like going back and kind of looking at, you mentioned the Insomniac thing, right? Like, I think Sony has, I think, focused more on acquiring teams and their abilities more so than I think specific IPs, right? Whether it's like, a studio's work in VR or making great games like Insomniac, or, or
Insomniac deal. Like they've been working with them for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, and Insomniac didn't own any IP besides Sunset Overdrive.
Sunset Overdrive, yeah.
And I think they own the rights to Song of the Deep.
I think
A
you're
lot
right.
of
Yeah.
other stuff, I mean, they didn't own. All that other their stuff was either owned by Sony or whatever VR studio that they did the work for. So like that's why they were able to get them so cheap. You know what I mean? And they had, made Ratchet and Clank and all these other games previously. So it was, handshake deal. Hey, come over here. We'll give you a couple million. Ted Price, you could take a seat now. I mean, we'll go.
Yeah.
We got the wheels turning.
Ted was also ready to cash out too, from what I've read.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that deal was kind of done a long time ago. It was, they went back home. They went out there. They wanted to keep their own IP. They went out there. They saw what it was, and they went back home.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like that's the acquisition again. A studio making great games, right? Like you just listed some of those games, and then like they've invested in studios that make great remakes. I mean, look at Blue Point. I mean, if you've played Shadow of the Colossus, which I think is a phenomenal remake, right? I mean, Demon Souls was really good, right? But I was a little more impressed with Shadow of the Colossus. Well, you know what? Maybe I was a little more impressed with Shadow of the Colossus. I thought Shadow of the Colossus, when it came out on the PlayStation 2, was a little ahead of its time. And obviously, because of hardware, I think that game probably didn't really realize its vision, I guess. And I felt like the remake of that game did on PlayStation 4. But look at Demon Souls. I mean, I think you could probably make the same comment about Demon Souls and some of the issues the game had on PlayStation 3. But again, that's another example of kind of, not necessarily buying for specific IP, but for this skill set and talent that this studio brings to the fold for Sony. So,
well, and I think that's the thing. We talk about covering gaps. Like I don't personally like Sony. I don't think has an IP problem. I don't think they have a problem, right, with their stable of characters. I think they have a genre coverage problem, right, in their portfolio. Right. In that,
exactly.
I know people won't like it, but
it's true.
They do third person action adventure games, right, and they've got that on lock, right, much in the same way that kind of Ubisoft like patented. I use that term colloquially, like the model for building out open world games for a while. But like if I look at, hey, are you hitting drum beats on like all these genres, right? I don't feel like Sony does, right? Even the racing one, Gran Turismo's great, but like I feel like I've seen one of those games per decade of my life, right? And that's not a great productivity factor, right?
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
That's the like,
yeah, go ahead, B.
Game like just talk about the gaps. Like when I look at Ubisoft, for me, they fill a lot of gaps that are missing for PlayStation. I think that, what I mean, as far as like Ubisoft has racers that they don't really utilize, like the crew, like with the right direction, I think they could turn their crew into like that arcade racer equivalent to what like Forza Horizon is. I mean, Ubisoft has a selection of shooters that are already service-based games. They have games that they've turned into RPGs. They have platformers. Like they have a slew of IPs that they could use to fill gaps. And even if Sony wanted to get like weird, do like the VR stuff, they have like Just Dance, which they could incorporate Sony Music Group. Like there's a lot of stuff that they could utilize under the Ubisoft umbrella. And I think that's why it would make a good acquisition for them, because it would definitely fill gaps that Sony kind of has right now.
Yeah, and if you follow the logic, right, and you talk Jim Ryan saying he's going to put out 10 live service games in 10 years, if he buys Ubisoft, that immediately takes care of 4, right, that are already in pipeline to become live service.
Oh, are you guys foreshadowing a purchase of Ubisoft then?
Oh man, we just throwing out ideas, man.
I mean, because look, I hate speculating like this on these kinds of things. Like like I get like Game Logic. I'm kind of with you in that regard. Like I don't like but it kind of makes sense. It would make sense.
and then what it leaves, right? It leaves EA and Take-Two. Right, really, and Square Enix maybe is kind of, at least the ones that are in my mind are kind of the big I won't say commercial forces, but I'll say the big creative forces that we think about when we think about the people who are going to put out the bulk of like new releases in a year that we're looking forward to, right? That's been, again, I know that there's an argument against it, but I'll say that's been Activision, right? And then EA and Ubisoft definitely being the top three, and then and then Square Enix Take Two.
Yeah, well, interesting. Yeah, Ubisoft would be interesting for them. I mean, but I think you're right, B. It would certainly fill a lot of voids or needs. And then we talk about those 10 services games. I mean, you're talking about 4 right there from Ubisoft, right? I mean, and I got to believe, it's interesting. I think, a lot of people are saying, well, how again, we go back to the concern of, are they going to pull resources from other places? Well, what if they're not pulling resources? What if they're acquiring resources, right? And
right.
And
yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I say, and Jim Ryan in his quote, hey, you expect more announcements like this, and that's not exactly what he said, but it's basically what he said. Jim Ryan saying, hey, we're going to make more announcements of acquisitions, and then they're putting out 10. Well, maybe Jim knows, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're saying 10 because we have some agreements with these other publishers or studios that are going to help feed that pipeline. So go ahead, Game Logic.
Well, and then you talk about how bullish Jim Ryan has become about putting games out on PC, and Ubisoft's catalog is entirely available on PC. So it's an interesting formula, right, that they could go after. The other thing I will say is you and B Buddy have talked about like acquiring talent and acquiring tools. One of the things that I will continue to praise is that earliest in my memory was Ubisoft figuring out this HR framework for making talent right universally available across all of its studios remotely, and building out that tool set and building out an HR system that made the availability of those resources available and visible right to those studio leads. And so they were the guys who crafted this system whereby, as I talked about before, a Unreal Engine expert, right, in Red Storm in North Carolina, right, who had low cycles, right, could be seen, and a creative director in Ubisoft Montreal could be aware that that resource had cycles available who might need help, right, on a given game on their project, right? And so rather than going out and hiring another developer, it allowed them to more effectively utilize the resources that they were already paying for. And so acquiring Ubisoft and bringing that tool set in, and again, that kind of intellectual capital in, is the type of talent framework that would, again, help Sony out, especially if they were talking about going to live service games, because that type of framework would definitely be useful and helpful.
Yeah, that's actually, that's a great point about tools, resources, and how those complement Sony, or could complement them, right? The other thing I was thinking about Ubisoft is you were mentioning, like, they have and you mentioned like all their content's on PC, and they have what's called Ubisoft Connect, right?
Right, the service.
Yeah, and so PlayStation really doesn't have that per se on PC. Would that be an inroad for them on PC, right?
Yeah, flip that and make it, what is it, PlayStation Sparta?
Yeah, Spartacus, right? So, I could see, and then if I think about, so JD Gamer brought up CD Projekt Red. I mean, outside of CDPR and in their content, they also have what is it? The launcher, GOG. Yeah. We know, and I'm reason why I'm thinking about this now. Again, like you mentioned, like Jim Ryan being bullish about PC, and B, you mentioned that too. Like he's looking to kind of build outside of that walled garden of the console and break into new markets, which clearly Sony's got. There's value in their IPs. I mean, look at God of War doing very well right now on Steam, right?
Right. So here's a crazy prediction, and I actually don't think this is what happened. And I hope it doesn't. I think if if Sony acquired CD Projekt Red, I would hope and think that GOG would be one of the things that they would divest and sell off to skirt like problems with the FTC and discussions of anti-competitive. But it would be super interesting if they did acquire CD Projekt Red, acquired GOG and then made all PC games exclusive to GOG and stopped letting them go to Steam. That would be such a Sony move. It would be great to
Oh my
see.
God. But do you think, I mean, like, I don't even think, though, they would, I don't see them ever pulling games off Steam. I think Steam is just too big of a machine, right?
Yeah, they see the extra money rolling in now. They know what's going on. But GOG would be a big that could change the landscape though.
Definitely between Steam, Epic Games, and GOG, it could rearrange that whole battle and make GOG less of an also ran. Now, I don't know that Sony would be interested in their model because GOG is the whole no DRM champion. I'm certain Sony wouldn't be interested in that.
No, they wouldn't.
I don't think I've bought a game on. I don't think I've. Well, I bought Death Stranding, but I mean, so the only DRM that they have is just whatever's wrapped into Steam, right? They don't have their own Sony proprietary DRM in there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that I would assume that if they were going to go that route, they would inject their own DRM scheme into GOG. But I even think that they could still get away with doing that if they just said, but we're only doing this for like the Sony exclusive titles that are coming now solely to GOG.
Can I? And this is totally like off topic, but I'm laughing because a couple days before the announcement of Sony acquiring Bungie, there was there was this article that went out that Sony was like $1 trillion in debt. Did you see this, B Money? I know you didn't, Game Logic.
Yeah.
Maybe I shared it with you, Game Logic. But did you see that, B, going around on Twitter?
Did.
I mean, like,
I just laughed.
yeah, it's like, come on, like, people, like, let's not. I said this too, like, I think we got to tread carefully as gamers in the gaming community to not to make definitive statements about things we really don't have a lot of knowledge about.
Oh man, not everybody's a financial analyst. You know that? They got the degree over the weekend, and not everybody's experts.
Yeah, Game Logic, you missed this, man. I think you may have been entertained by it, or maybe not. I don't know, man. But it was pretty funny. It was funny. It was people were all of a sudden financial analysts and knew Sony's finances, and they were saying they were $1 trillion in debt when that $1 trillion was actually misrepresented. It was in dollars when it was supposed to be in yen. It was, yeah. And then days later, Sony acquires Bungie for $3.6 billion. But they're broke.
They're broke. They ain't got no money, man.
Yeah, they get broke. But
They're barely surviving.
Barely survive, exactly. I meant to bring that. It made me laugh, and it's one of those things where, again, like I said, we should just tread carefully because I think unfortunately a lot of that. And and I'm not trying to single anyone out, but I see this happen a lot in certain podcasts where they go in these conversations and it's like, yeah, like we're not financial analysts here. We could speculate, but maybe at least present it as, hey, you know what? I don't know all the facts, but here's my opinion. But the way some of these conversations go, it's like they're in the know. It's like, no, you're really not. You're not a financial analyst. It's like. You don't know. It's like again, the one thing that comes up. I just had this conversation the other day. Oh well, Sony just bought 5 studios. That's the same as Microsoft paying 70 billion for a publisher. It's like, no, the scope, and we talked about this, Game Logic. On the scope, like in terms of scope, it's not the same. If I go out and buy 7 hotels in New York City, and B Money, you go out and buy Hilton International Worldwide, that's not the same thing.
Exactly.
Game Logic, now I know why you left.
Yeah, I would have had I frequently have conniptions at some of this stuff because I am not an analyst or an expert, but I do have a graduate degree in finance. I at least kind of played some of this on TV, right? So, but I mean, I even talk about market cap value. Market cap value doesn't take into debt, and some of the chats in some of the comments in chat are good, right? In that every company has debt. There's probably no such thing, right, as any American corporation in our financial system
Oh, I have
that
debt.
doesn't have debt, right? It's a matter of your net value of your enterprise value on how that debt balances out with cash on hand and cash equivalents and right and other factors, right, that become pertinent. But again, a lot of those things are only pertinent if you're actually planning on buying stock, right? So for the layman's conversation, I think market cap covers it, and obviously Sony would not still be afloat and a going concern if they were $1 trillion in debt when they only have a market cap of about 156 billion.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think that report like had their cash on hand as $1 trillion too, and no one read that. And so you had $1 trillion in debt and $1 trillion cash in hand, and no one and so that was this. It was a really bad article, by the way. It shouldn't have been. And I think it's been taken down since, by the way.
Yeah, what's frustrating to me about all this stuff, these are things that people get wrong. Again, I often talk about people who utilize random facts simply to serve their narrative, right? And that's a stark difference between reporting, right, versus twisting something to support your narrative. The Sony balance sheet is immediately findable off of a simple Google, right? I'm looking at their balance sheet right now. It's 17 billion cash on hand, total debt of 25 billion, net cash of -8, right? Book value of 63 billion, working capital of -26. These things are easily findable and can be snipped in a Windows and pasted in a tweet. But for some reason, right, people seem to run off and, I don't know, grab something that some like fan blog put in a post or something. I don't really get it.
What's even like cringe about that though, that topic, that article, you even had like Destin Legary, you mentioned Games Media earlier, quoting that number.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so I'll quickly get on my soapbox about game show. Like my
I did that on purpose, by the way.
You've done an amazingly job at learning how to spin me up in a relatively short amount of time.
That's kind of like, my job as a host is like keep the conversation going. So it's funny, like there are things I hear, I remember like I might bring that up later on, but I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
So I mean, and I have respect for game journalists who are trying to do a job and trying to earn pay, right, and trying to make their way in life, and I get it. I feel like just what I've seen over the last 20 years or so, you go back to the 2000s. Again, I call out Gary Whitta, who was the editor-in-chief of PC Gamer, right, which was kind of one of the first publications that I really glommed onto. I'd been reading game magazines for a long time, but when I started kind of getting a little more professionally interested, that was kind of one of the big ones. And just the overall quality of, I feel like, what the average game journalist knows and understands, and the conversations that I hear, like, I don't do this for a living. I do this in my hobbyist free time, and there are quite frequently many instances in a given week where I feel like I hear game journalists talking on podcasts who don't know things that I know, right? And I guess I kind of feel like that's kind of inexcusable for somebody who does that for a living, right? And I get stuff wrong all the time. I don't remember, right, what studio made an exclusive on what platform in 2007, right? But lots of times I remember, oh yeah, wait, I did remember reading like that thing, and I can quickly look it up because I know what I'm looking for. So it's just weird to me that, I mean, even if I go back to and I'm not, personally, I've had reason to look at like some of the history and dialogue about Colin Moriarty, but even if I go back to the Greg Miller, Colin Moriarty days, right, back at IGN, and podcasts like 10 years ago-ish, maybe, or a little more, it just seems like people like understood a little bit more about the hardware and things. Like, I've heard journalists talking about SSDs, in this generation of consoles, now that SSDs have become a topic of conversation, and just like blatantly getting like the basic understanding of the technology just flat wrong, right? Particularly, and then try and speak to what their importance is in the PC gaming space, and I'm like, it's wearying, right? It's exhausting.
You're just like, oh my god, why is this?
Right?
Why is this happening?
why is this person right on a podcast being paid to be a games journalist, right? When I'm like, look, send these guys to school, right? Get a subscription to ITTV, right? And have them at least go learn how to build a basic gaming computer, right? Have them go, you acquire some basic knowledge of the technology base of the things that they're talking about. I don't expect everyone on those shows to be an engineer, but I listened to Gordon Maung from like the Full Nerd, right? Who again, I go back, was like the lead Maximum PC gaming editor, right? Which comes from the same stable as PC Gamer, and you talk about that level of technical accuracy being kind of the norm, right? And now we get right. I mean, so part of this problem I feel like in this console war of people who wildly get technical aspects of the discussion just wrong, right, and then twist it to serve their narrative, kind of starts with the fact that a lot of games journalists like only have the most basic casual knowledge of these topics and can't effectively speak to them, right? Now we're in this world of NFTs, and I guarantee you, right, that the average game journalist like can't explain cryptocurrency, right, at its most basic fact. And I get it; it's a complicated topic, right? It quite frankly drives me nuts, and there's certain security aspects of the thing I have to figure out, right, and that's my paid job, right? But like so the industry gets more and more complex, right? As every month, week, generation goes on, the technical topics get more complex, and I feel like the expertise that is reporting on them and talking about them is just going, downhill, which is an unfortunate opposition in trends.
Yeah, the other thing too is, it's, you're right. Like, it's definitely changed in the last 10 years, and I don't know if it's because there's this mad dash to get information out as quickly as possible because we're in this super connected world now, right? With Twitter, social media, you know what I mean? And I don't know how much of that, I think back of, shovelware, what you said earlier about the games industry in 1983. Is it we've gotten to a point where game journalism was like shovelware now?
Well, I think to a certain extent it is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is an interesting topic. If I could take a quick tangent, right? You go back to the Gizmodo and Gadget rivalry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where those two sites were like in a frat boy level competition to be first to post, right? And how that kind of spun out of like Gawker Media and kind of drove the way reporting is done on the internet. Right. And then you talk about, okay, then when we settled back down from that, the residual impact that I feel it left is people still needed volume, right? People still needed a workforce. As that workforce was needed, it got extended to freelancing, and it became more and more people who were just reporting, right? Not doing investigative journalism, right? And I'm not a Schreier fan whatsoever. Right, but at least, right, I guess the comment I would make is at least that guy digs, right, and tries to pull a bunch of facts or pull a bunch of observations together. I won't call them facts, right, and has sources, right, and tries to pull together, cogent reports, whereas now it's just so much quick to post, and I think that's part of the dilution that we're seeing. I think we're seeing so many
It's a
people
great point.
employed by these
I like the
websites.
word. I like the word you use, but dilution, by the way, because that's probably the best way to, I think, describe it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it makes me think of 1983.
right. And I'll say, and I'll wrap up by saying I think it also extends back to what's going on in journalistic training and journalistic academia, where I mean, as far as I know, there aren't really any dedicated, and maybe there can't be, maybe there's not the volume they're needed. There's not really any like game journalist academic track, right? All these guys come out of kind of general, diluted, watered down kind of journalism. And I don't know that anybody's really trained today to really be a tech journalist, right? Or to be a game journalist, right? They learn how to report on like the local football team and like when the freaking water main broke right down on Main Street. And then they go out and get a job as a games journalist, and it's a different game, and they learn that via OJT. And then we get kind of some of the bagooned up things that I think we wind up getting.
Yeah, it's, you know what, we gotta get you back on, talk about this more, Game Logic. It's a very interesting topic, man. Very interesting to say the least. But I want to grab a super chat before we wrap up. We got JD Gamer with the $5 super chat. Thank you for the super chats again, JD. Really appreciate it, man. Says one of the best ways to learn is to simply be there to watch a great creator work, and Sony's watching Marvel work, and they're learning, and that's good. Thank you for that super chat, sir. Appreciate it. So, no, that's a we got. If we had time, I'd like to talk about that more, but because there's this idea of media bias, years ago, I used to kind of say, well, that's not really a thing, but anyhow, that's another conversation. But first of all, I want to thank everyone in the live chat. Thank you all for coming out, hanging out with us tonight. Really appreciate the time as always. If you haven't done so, please hit that like button, smash the like button. If you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you're alerted when we go live. My man T-Rock 40 with the $5 super chats. T-Rock says, I want to go back 20 years and tell BRAP one day he'll touch a demon. Wow. That is a by the way, that is a Souls reference to Demon Souls. And I forget what she's in Dark Souls, and I forget what the doll says in Bloodborne, but I think she says something similar to touch the inner something in me. Anyhow, it's a running joke, but I appreciate that super chat, T-Rock. So thank you, man. But no, again, thank you everyone in the live chat. Really appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us this evening. But Game Logic, man, I want to say thank you again, man, for coming on the show. Really appreciate your insight as always. And maybe one day you'll come back to Twitter, maybe, or maybe not.
That's not happening. I did, however, drop a link to the Wikipedia entry for the video game crash of 1983 for anyone who didn't have the good fortune to live through that in its actual live glory. But that's there if people want to go take a read.
Oh my! Yeah, we can blame ET for the giving the death blow to the industry. Which is why Nintendo marketed the Nintendo as the Nintendo Entertainment System and packaged it with Rob the Robot. So anyhow, that's another conversation. But B Money, man, look, B, I gotta say something, man. I took notes, jotted some things down. You said, man, to see if these things happen in the future. So we'll see.
Receipts. Check his receipts.
I got receipts, B Money.
That's all right. My receipts is always valid.
I love it.
Money in the bank.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Money in the bank. B, man, look, let everyone know where they can find you, man.
You can find me everywhere. Same name, B Money 101. We had a great show tonight. Appreciate Gamer Logic coming through. Look forward to more news throughout the year, man. It's gonna be an exciting year. I'm super excited for this year. Great games coming this year. Great news coming from a lot of the big names in the industry. So I'm looking forward to the rest of this year.
Yeah, me too, man. This is just I tell you what, as challenging as this pandemic's been, I think gaming is the one thing is kept me somewhat sane. I mean, it really has. This year is just going to be phenomenal. I mean, we even talk about all the other stuff that's coming later on in the year. But there's certainly a lot to play. I mean, this month of February, like we said earlier, when we kicked off the show, there's just so much content coming out this month. And there's a lot of variety too, which is nice. Nice mix of everything. It's not just big AAA bangers, as they say. It's some smaller titles too, which is really, really cool. So
a lot of those smaller titles have been outshining the big titles too, man. Death Store,
stuff
Death
like that. Great.
Tunic is coming in March.
That's right. I forgot about Tunic. Yeah.
Yeah. So don't sleep on those little guys out there because they putting in that work.
No, they really are. And you bring up Death Store. I mean, what a fantastic game. I haven't finished it yet, but what I played of it, I loved it. Loved it. Really good game. So, but yeah, no. Again, thank you everyone in the live chat. We'll be back next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I may or may not do a BRAP rant this weekend. We'll see. It's going to be kind of a busy weekend, but we'll see. Maybe I have some time. I'll squeeze a quick rant in. But other than that, we're out. We'll catch you guys next week. Hey, enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the weekend. Have fun gaming. That's what it's all about, having fun. Just remember that. Fun. And we're out.